Brian, thank you so much for inviting me to speak. I am greatly regretful that I cannot be with you in person, but I am deeply grateful to Brian, to Giles, and to Dougie for making it possible for me to join you at least virtually from here in Hartford this morning for me, this afternoon for you in London. I regret that the city of Hartford seems to have picked today to dig up the road outside my office window. So I'm using headphones in the hope that that masks some of the sound. So hopefully you're not hearing that, and we will navigate that distraction in the background. I hope you will also forgive the slightly pretentious title for my talk, You This Way, You That Way, We This Way. The full title, of course, if we give it in full, comes from that wonderful closing from Shakespeare's Love's Labour's Lost. The full lines are, "The words of Mercury are harsh after the songs of Apollo, you that way, we this way." I've chosen it because those lines seem to resonate a lot with me as someone who plays a role in administering a public art museum in the year 2023, especially as we emerge from some major events in recent history. And that sense of a divergence or two paths seems very resonant. And the image, hopefully on your screen right now, is a little blurry, forgive me, but it's Girodet's image of Minerva between Mercury and Apollo. And I think anyone, again, who administers a museum may be feeling that tension between the wonderful songs of Apollo and the rather harsher realities of Mercury and the business side of affairs. I fear I don't have the wisdom of Minerva to offer today necessarily, but hopefully, as Brian suggested, perhaps some insights into thinking about how a museum like ours here in Hartford, the Wadsworth Atheneum, that's the oldest public museum in the United States, may offer some hints about what the future might be for public museums in the United States. In terms of museums, this, of course, is Claude's wonderful image of the sort of primordial museum. It's the Muses on Mount Helicon in Greece. This wonderful image of the Muses in their proper home, if you like. But today museums are deeply contested places. We inhabit an environment that is rather different from this idyllic and rarefied world. Again, the songs of Apollo, there he is with the Muses, are not always the voices that we hear. Museums are perhaps at the moment some of the most contested places within our culture. Certainly here in the United States, we are deep in the midst of a long simmering culture war, which has been going for perhaps as long as 50 or more years. The concept of a culture war, a cultural war, was really first articulated verbally in the early 1990s. The idea of a battle or a struggle for the values of the country, in this case, the United States. So what are our values as a society, and that this is a fight, a sort of agonistic struggle. This battle, this cultural war, was as important as the Cold War, which at that point was on the brink of being won, and that this battle would be fought out in the public domain in institutions like ours, in museums. And today we feel this very strongly. I mean, I think if we look at the media, for instance, we find that places like museums or public libraries or schools are really on the front lines of this culture war. And so museums are certainly not immune in any way from being at the heart of this very contested culture that is very present at the moment in our country, in the United States. I'm sure it's very true as well in Britain and elsewhere in Europe and beyond. We, of course, are emerging from particularly important events that have happened in recent times, the global pandemic that was COVID, and of course, in this country, in the United States, during the pandemic, particularly a significant event, the killing of George Floyd, which marked the beginning of what some people have suggested is the third era of Reconstruction in this country. The first being after the United States Civil War, which came to an abrupt end. The second being the era of the Civil Rights Movement and the age of, if you like, Martin Luther King. And then this now being a third period of Reconstruction as we consider issues of racial justice in the United States. All of these issues then are currently at the forefront, and museums are very much at the heart of these debates, and these issues cannot be avoided as we consider the future of museums. And certainly our museum is no exception as we consider the future. If I had a dollar or a pound for every person who wrote an angry email or letter or left a phone call from both sides of the political spectrum, telling me that they would never visit the museum again or never renew a membership because of something they perceived we had done, or something they had seen we had acquired, or some object that was on display, or some exhibition we had done, that they had extrapolated from that we were going one direction or another in the culture wars, that therefore they could no longer feel that the museum was a place for them. I could certainly, at least I think, probably endow a curatorship. So we are certainly contested battle zones, and we are not alone at the museum, the Wadsworth Atheneum. This is very much contested territory. So this wonderful Claudian vision of an idyllic paradise is far from reality. This is certainly perhaps something more of the image that faces museums and collections at the moment. During the COVID pandemic, the Association of Art Museum Directors, this sort of the body that a voluntary body, but most museum directors adhere to, decided to ease restrictions on deaccessioning. Previously, rules around deaccessioning were very strict and prevented deaccessioning, except allowing deaccessioning that would then go back into acquiring new works of art. Those rules were temporarily eased to allow museums that were struggling to stay open as revenues crashed to use funds for operating in a temporary window. And museums then also began to think about other opportunities. Some museums, the Brooklyn Museum was a good case, did very discreetly deaccession a large number of works for general operating and other purposes. Other museums, perhaps most famously the Baltimore Museum, began to think about deaccessioning objects to rethink their entire mission, thinking about deaccessioning works by canonical artists of the mid-20th century, usually white male artists, to be able to acquire, to use the funds to create an endowment to buy works by contemporary and particularly minority artists. So completely rethink their collecting strategy. And of course, this created a great deal of protest. And from all sides, again, of the political spectrum, ultimately Baltimore was prevented from moving ahead from doing that. But all kinds of protests around the question of deaccessioning and collections and museums. So we're in the midst of this great ferment, if you like, and no museum, I think, at the moment in the United States, or no public entity, period, full stop, can avoid it. And certainly we cannot here at the museum. I'm not going to suggest I have, as I said, all the answers, but I would at least offer us as a test case or as an example, we are the oldest public art museum, and we've always been somewhat distinct and somewhat different. And I will explain why and how that gives us perhaps a particular path that allows us to navigate these current culture wars in our own way. And I'll talk through that as we proceed. So this is the Wadsworth Atheneum. I'm quite sure that all of you have visited in the past, and if you haven't, next time you're on the East Coast, no doubt you will. But as Brian mentioned, founded in 1842, and what you see on the screen today is the legacy of 180 years, 5 different buildings that have ultimately made up our campus, if you like. But the lower left in your screen, the castle-like building, is the original building from that was constructed in 1843 and opened in 1844. And the reason we're different to all other museums, aside from being the oldest, is because of the man on the right of your screen, Daniel Wadsworth. And Daniel Wadsworth was a Hartford native, a Hartford resident, who had the idea that he would create the museum here in the city. The reason it was so innovative was because he had a rather daring idea for a conservative city like this one. He wanted really to create a gallery of pictures. He had formed a truly incredible collection of contemporary American paintings, principally Hudson River School pictures. He was a great patron of Thomas Cole. He was the most important early patron of Frederick Edwin Church, and others too. And his decision was to give these paintings to the public just at the close of his life, and to create a gallery of paintings. And as you see on the left, this broad side, it does indicate the gallery of paintings in the Wadsworth Atheneum. The only challenge was this was a rather daring and radical idea for a city like Hartford. There seemed to be, I think, something a little bit frivolous about the idea of simply enjoying pictures just as pictures. This is a rather well, it was a Puritan city in its founding, and the idea of just enjoying pictures for their own sake was a little bit too much in the 1840s. And Daniel Wadsworth needed extra support to get this off the ground. There had already been existing institutions in the city. There was a young men's reading room where young men gathered to read the latest ideas emerging around the world in newspapers. And there was already a reading room that was in search of a permanent home. And there was already a historical society where people could trace their genealogies and so on, also in search of a permanent home. And so these 3 entities, a notional gallery of pictures, a reading room for newspapers and magazines, and a historical society merged together and created this entity, the Wadsworth Atheneum, hence the name. So from the outset, we were unusual in both incorporating a wide variety of functions and being the very first museum of pictures in the United States. Since this isn't a lecture about the history of the museum, I won't go into how those 2 other functions, a reading room for magazines and newspapers and historical society, eventually split away, and we ended up where we are today with Daniel Wadsworth's original vision of just being a museum. I won't go into how all that happened. I'm going to focus just on the collections, the art collections, because Daniel Wadsworth's original vision was the one that endured over time here at the museum. So Daniel Wadsworth is why we are distinct and different, because not only did he create this museum in the city of Hartford, the first in the country, but also founded it with a collection of contemporary pictures, contemporary American pictures. And this is the 1840s, the great age when the whole collection of what will America be, what is this new nation, and what will the American school be, both in art and in literature, how will that be forged in this mid-19th century moment? These were the burning questions of the time, the great questions of people like Walt Whitman as well, exactly at the same moment. And Wadsworth throws his lot in with establishing an American school that would be based on contemporary American landscape pictures, but in dialogue, in a way, with the past. This is one of those great founding objects in the collection, fantastic painting by Thomas Cole, of Mount Washington. Mount Washington in the background, still in its wonderful original Daniel Wadsworth frame. This wonderful frame with this wonderful little outset corners. We have a wonderful group of these Wadsworth pictures with their original frame. So this is the kind of core quality of the founding collection here in the museum. He also gathered together a group of like-minded friends in Hartford when the New York Academy went defunct, an academy founded by John Trumbull, Benjamin West's pupil. When that went defunct, they gathered together to buy paintings from that institution. And again, it was contemporary pictures, both European and American. Two great highlights from that collection were Sir Thomas Lawrence's great picture of full length of Benjamin West delivering his famous lecture on colors. So that came in 1842 as well. And that was painted just at the moment Benjamin West died. And on the right, John Vanderlyn's very famous painting of the death of Jane McCrae. That came again in 1842. So from the outset, it is a collection of particularly strong in American pictures or pictures of American artists and in contemporary work. That early sense of the collection was further cemented by a major gift from Elizabeth Jarvis Colt, the widow of Samuel Colt, the firearms manufacturer. Elizabeth Colt is a much underestimated figure. She was really the one who ran the Colt firearms manufactory for many decades because Samuel Colt died rather prematurely. And Elizabeth Colt was a great collector in a wide variety of areas, both in some really fabulous paintings. She was also a great patron of contemporary American painters, Frederick Edwin Church, and this is Frederick Church's really incredible painting of Jamaica. You can't get a sense of scale, alas, in the slide. This is a wonderful sort of Constable 6-footer scale view of Jamaica, painted right at the moment of the Morant Bay Rebellion. And you see these wonderful affinities to Turner's Hannibal crossing the Alps. But again, a Frederick Church in its original frame, commissioned by Elizabeth Colt for her home in Hartford. All of her painting collection given to the museum when she died, just after 1900. But it also, her collection then also broadened the scope of what we had at that moment, because it introduced really for the first time significant works of decorative arts. On the left, one of the objects from her collection, a gift to Samuel Colt from the Russian Tsar, a German-made jeweled snuff box from about 1860s or so. And so that introduced very high quality works of 19th century decorative arts, which broadened the range and scope of the collections. And that fostered other local collectors to give in like ways. On the right, a really terrific Hannah Barlow vase from about 1878, 1880, which was given around 1910. So only about 30 years old at the time it was given to the museum, but already in the early 20th century, the Wadsworth becoming a home for great examples of decorative arts. So the museum early on in its history, becoming a place, not just a place for paintings as Daniel Wadsworth had originally intended, but becoming a much broader home for works of very high quality and decorative art. That was further cemented by the really transformational gift just after he died, the bequest of J.P. Morgan. Pierpont Morgan was born and raised in the city of Hartford, left as a teenager to move to London with his father, but retained a great affection for the city. He's buried here in Hartford. And after he died, his bequest to the city was both a wing of the museum here and his incredible collection of European decorative arts. And just a couple of examples, the collections are vast, and not giving great justice to the ceramics just to pick out two, but two really fabulous examples on the left. The great Van Sen basket of flowers, and on the right, the Meissen bird cage. I don't often wish I'm a bird, but whenever I see the Meissen bird cage, I do think, gosh, if I could be a bird, if I could live in that cage, I would gladly do so. And in fact, actually, the Van Sen basket is a Meissen basket. So it's Van Sen and Meissen in one. So it's two for the price of one. It's a real sort of bargain object. So this is the level of quality that the JP Morgan gave to the museum in terms of historic European decorative art. And it went further too in other media. A fabulous collection of antiquities, including wonderful early bronzes. The highlight perhaps being the very famous and celebrated Spartan warrior of about 500 BC, or perhaps Spartan, but traditionally called Spartan warrior. And then on the right, other fabulous decorative arts including works in ivory, such as this Viennese Adam and Eve from the middle of the 17th century. So this was the level of quality that JP Morgan's gift gave, that really transformed the nature of the collections here at the Wadsworth Atheneum. But in the realm of painting at this time, it was still very much a collection focused on American art, although again, still focusing on very fine examples. And it was in the early 1920s that the museum acquired its first painting by Whistler. This is Whistler's just stunning painting, Alone by the Tide, an early painting of about 1860, painted in Normandy just when he was recovering from his sort of near-death illness in 1860. So this is the scope of the museum as it emerged in around 1920. And then it really had its other transformational moments, which helped really define it and shape it in the way it is today. And that was the advent of J. Everett Austin, Chick Austin to his friends. We'll take the liberty of calling him Chick from here on in the talk. So Chick Austin arrived as a very young director in his early 20s, in the late 1920s. He'd come from Harvard. Very much shaped by current scholarship coming out of Harvard and particularly coming out of Britain, an enthusiasm, I'm happy to say, coming out of Britain, and particularly shaped by his enthusiasm for early Baroque, particularly Italian Baroque. And this was a transformational taste because, as you may imagine, in New England, certainly, and across museums in the United States, but certainly in New England, this kind of painting was simply not the taste. And so really the Wadsworth Atheneum was pioneering in acquiring a simply outstanding collection of early Baroque paintings, especially Italian Baroque paintings. And I think I can safely say that our room of early Baroque paintings is perhaps unrivaled in the United States. Certainly, this is our greatest picture among them. And it's still the earliest and the greatest Caravaggio painting to reach a collection in the United States. It's his Caravaggio's Great St. Francis in Ecstasy, currently on view in London, in fact, at the National Gallery for the St. Francis exhibition. But this was the kind of picture that Chick Austin brought to Hartford, and it was truly transformational for not just Hartford, but for museums across the United States. The fact now that today you will find paintings like this throughout the United States is really down to the impact of Chick Austin in those moments in the 1920s and 1930s. He was director here for almost 20 years. Other great examples of old master pictures that he brought to the museum are the incredible Strozzi painting of St. Catherine on the left. Again, I think indisputably the greatest painting by Strozzi in the United States, And on the right, the wonderful painting by Sverts of the young boy. Again, I think hard to beat, certainly in this country, in terms of its quality. And today, if you visit the museum, you will see a gallery like this one, built by J.P. Morgan and filled with pictures that were acquired really through that passion that came in the 1920s, filled currently with mostly European, but also some American paintings. But it was really that transformational moment from the 1920s on, as the museum became passionate about old master pictures and European old masters. However, and this is where we pivot towards our sort of this way and towards the future, the other thing that Chick Austin continued was that Daniel Wadsworth enthusiasm for the new and for the contemporary. And he brought both a passion for the old master, and the new. And the Wadsworth became a hub in the 1920s and 30s for the new and pioneering, and it established a reputation as being the institution that of anywhere in the United States that was being the most innovative in all areas, including not just the visual arts, but also in the performing arts. George Balanchine, the great dancer and choreographer, after a brief stop in London after Russia and France, of course, came to the United States and began his career in Hartford before moving on to New York. So the Wadsworth became a great pioneering hub. We were the first museum to buy a painting by Mondrian. This is his picture of 1935 that came when it was new. And we were the first museum in the United States to mount an exhibition of the work of Picasso. That was in 1934. This is his wonderful Bather of 1922. So the Wadsworth continued that pioneering spirit that it had forged 100 years earlier in the 1840s by mounting these seminal exhibitions that really transformed museum culture in the United States in the first part of the 20th century. This is before the Museum of Modern Art even exists, although it would be established shortly after, and already partly through people associated with the world of Chick Austin. We were, again, the first museum to acquire a painting by Salvador Dali, who was a regular visitor to Chick Austin in Hartford. And his very famous painting of 1938 here is among the group of Dali's currently at the museum, acquired by Chick Austin. It's one of those pictures that's so iconic that when visitors see it today, they assume it's a photographic reproduction, that it couldn't possibly be here in Hartford. It must simply be a poster. So that's one of the challenges, I think, that any regional museum in the United States faces, is the perception that if it's really good, it couldn't be in a regional museum. It must be in a great metropolitan place like New York or Boston or Chicago. So that's a challenge that all regional museums in the United States face. But that's another issue for another talk, another day. The other great pioneering thing that really forges a pathway forward for us today, which we'll get to in more detail in just a second, was the building created by Chick Austin in 1934, called the Avery Building. On the outside, this is the exterior. It's a rather, I suppose, rather unassuming. It's sort of rather attractive Art Deco exterior. But on the inside, it was very daring, very new, and must have been, I think, quite shocking when first opened in 1934. It was the first museum building in the United States in the Bauhaus style, in the international modern style. So this is before the Guggenheim, before Frank Lloyd Wright does that great interior there. It's the very first museum building in this international modern style. Again, sets a path for the future of museums. But notice what is right in the middle of this, this international modern courtyard. It is a sculpture by Pietro Francavilla, the great pupil of Giambologna. It's a fountain carved in 1600, one of a set of 13 sculptures. And I mean, the story behind this is truly incredible. And again, for a talk for another day. But Chuck Austin knew that it was sitting unsold from a dealer in Hartford, and that it was available for the right price. And he scooped it up and brought it there to be the centerpiece fountain for his new courtyard. And this sense of, and it's still there today. And this is a contemporary photograph taken just the other day of the courtyard. Forgive the cardboard in the courtyard. The fountain is being restored as we speak. So the cardboard is not normally there. It's not a Chick Austin feature, and it will be replaced by flowing water again in a matter of a month or two. But this fountain has been there from the very beginning. And it points to what I want to talk to for the final part of my talk. This sense of a direction forward through the culture wars that I talked about at the very beginning. Because this feature of an iconic piece of Mannerist sculpture in the midst of a building from 1934 in a Bauhaus style really captures something about the very essence of the Wadsworth Atheneum as an institution. I'm not suggesting it was something that Chick Austin created in 1934. I think it harks back to the very origins of our museum in Daniel Wadsworth's vision of 1842 and runs continuously from 1842 down to today. And that's a sense that the past, or the art of the past, is not in opposition to the art and culture of the present, or vice versa. The art and culture of the present is not in opposition to the art and culture of the past. And if there's a continuous strand there to be explored, or a dynamic tension between the two, they can be in dialogue with each other. Sometimes that dialogue is if you like, a continuity. Sometimes it is a creative tension between the two. But exploring that is at the heart of the museum's purpose. And if there are three aspects of us as an institution that will sort of shape the way we think about our collections and how the collections may grow, it is, I think, as hopefully it's been clear so far, one, a commitment to quality in collections. From the very outset, the founding collection of paintings was a collection of extraordinary quality, and that's been augmented over time with works of truly great quality. The second, an attention always to, alongside quality, to the new as well as the old. And the third is this sense that the new and the old are not in opposition, but in both a dialogue, sometimes a continuous dialogue, sometimes in a creative tension, and that might shape for us a path forward through these contested waters that we face today. I've just thrown in gratuitously, because it is a slight segue from what I'm moving on to, but because I'm a scholar of British art, and I am British and I'm far from home, I can't help but throw in two outstanding works of British art that were acquired for the collection at a time when people really weren't focused, aside from Paul Mellon, that people really weren't focused on British art. And the greatest painting by Wright of Derby in the United States, Wright of Derby's Old Man and Death from 1773, acquired for the collection. Gosh, I should remember. I think it was in the 60s. Linda there is in the room, and she may well know Linda Roth. And this wonderful Lord Leighton painting of Hercules, which was acquired in the 1980s, when such pictures could be had for ridiculously low prices. Again, this attention to absolute quality, even if the pictures were at that point not in great fashion, which heaven knows what this painting would be worth today. So that gets to this point about the Wadsworth being willing to be daring and not being worried about fashion, not being too worried about fashion and looking over its shoulder at what's happening up and down the road, but being confident in its own its own identity. And to that end, I'm going to talk about some current acquisitions for the collection in really the past year or so, and to talk about where collections might be going and where a public collection in the United States might be going in the current moment. First great example, this fabulous jeweled clock by Köhler, about 1720. In its original, with its original travel case, this was actually a J.P. Morgan object. It did not come with the original bequest. It had slipped away, and my fabulous colleagues, Linda Roth, who's with you in the room, our longest-serving curator here at the Wadsworth Atheneum, our curator of European decorative arts, and her colleague Vanessa Sigalis acquired this for the collection. And in fact, this was acquired in honor of Linda Roth's 40 years of service to the Wadsworth Atheneum. So thank you, Linda. I can't hear you in London, but round of applause for Linda while you're in the room there, because Linda is a terrific colleague. And also other outstanding works that were not represented in the collection. Again, this focus on quality, this really stunning snuff box by Luca from the Vienna Imperial Porcelain Manufactory. We had nothing, despite the strength of our European Dec Arts, from the Vienna manufactory. And this is a wonderful signed example of Luca's modeling, and this wonderful canine snuff box from about 1750. Similarly, in other media, just two examples of recent acquisitions in works on paper, two wonderful red chalk drawings. Cavaliere d'Arpino from 1596, his finished study or presentation drawing, really, for his great fresco of Romulus and Remus on the Capitoline, and on the right, a study for perhaps an unrealized painting of Susanna from the late 1760s by Greuze. Again, we have a fabulous works on paper collection, and augmenting that with outstanding works of great quality. We're also attentive to the need to represent artists who have not been properly represented in the past, particularly professional women artists. I'm showing on the left a great recent acquisition of a pastel by Rosalba Carriera, an unknown man, about 1720. And on the right, though, again, closing out our great history of Italian Baroque painting with a late Baroque painting as it shifts into Rococo, a great recent acquisition by Francisco Solomena of the Triumph of St. Dominic of about 1705. So again, a real attention, I hope you'll agree, to works of really outstanding quality that bring us back to that tradition from the 1840s. And again, with a focus to thinking about representing artists who have not been properly represented in the collection historically, professional women artists, so work by Rosalba we saw just now. Also Lee Krasner, we acquired a great early self-portrait, really a kind of a work from her student period from about 1933 on the left. And then a wonderful piece by Félicité Favot, the great European professional women sculptor of the 19th century, about 1841, a marble of St. Genevieve. And again, we're able to say this is the greatest example of her work in the United States. And so being able to augment the collection in these important ways and increase the representation of professional women artists with the finest examples of their work that we're able to acquire. And also, though, focusing on the new and the now, again, with works of outstanding quality. This is a photo from a series of 69 photographs by contemporary feminist photographer Justine Kurland. And earlier on, I showed a photograph of our Avery Court, that great Bauhaus court, that showed all 69 photographs installed in the one space in a kind of linear sequence, as the artist likes to do. This is a really terrific series of contemporary photographs that were begun in 1997 and completed in 2002, and then released as a photo book during the pandemic, and were acquired just last year by the museum and showed in a museum for the first time when we acquired them just at the beginning of this calendar year. So again, focusing on both the old and the new, but of course the affinities between Justine Kurland's work and historic representations in landscape are particularly strong. And also thinking too, of course, to, as I mentioned, the third era of Reconstruction in the United States, focusing on representation of minority artists. And on the right is a recent acquisition in drawing by the Turner Prize winning or nominated artist, Barbara Walker, a British artist, one from her new series of drawings called Marking the Moment, a drawing that represents Madame de Pompadour from a painting from the 18th century. We have a fabulous collection of ceramics that both represent Madame de Pompadour. This is on the left, the great image modeled by Falconet of Madame de Pompadour as friendship. I think Linda will know better. And this particular model was owned by her brother, the Marquis de Marigny. And so being able to put, again, objects from past and present in dialogue is still an ongoing ability we have by, again, buying contemporary works of great quality, and also adding to our collection in interesting and important new ways. On the screen right now is a set of forks for our American decorative arts collection that were made by Benson, a free man of color who worked in St. Croix in the Caribbean island, and one of a series of recent acquisitions that augments our current holdings in both American silver, but also gives us the finest collection of silver by free men of color from the 19th century of any museum in the United States. And so this currently on display in our brand new silver vault, a vault-like space that showcases the collections we have of silver, particularly British and American silver from the 17th through to contemporary silver, in fact. And again, but the spirit of being able to have the old and the new in dialogue with each other continues down to the present moment. A contemporary painting by the Zimbabwean-born artist who's currently working in London, Pizani Violet Hwami, sits extremely comfortably with an iconic work from the mid-century American collection, Robert Rauschenberg, his great picture from 1963 of Jack Kennedy, currently in our contemporary gallery. Or our most recent example of this phenomenon, a fabulous brand new acquisition has just got on the wall, acquired again by Linda Roth in the room there with you, a piece by Sophie Correndon, the British-based artist, from 2023. Her work, Hortus Conclusus, a new edition for the European Decorative Arts Collection, which now sits as comfortably at the top of our Morgan staircase, a building constructed in about 1910, as Francovilla's Venus sits in the Avery Courtyard from 1934. So again, if asked to say what's the future of collections in the United States, well, certainly I can point to our own collections and suggest that for us it's about an ongoing legacy that is focused on quality, on focus on experimentation, and a willingness to focus not so much on fashion, but on confidence in our identity, and a willingness to embrace the past and the present, and to see them as in a dialogue and a creative tension. That then, for me, is the future of collections for our museum, at least in the United States. And thank you, everyone, for your attention.